I'm sort of deliberately going around the world, and I want us now to go to the Americas. Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. I hear stories that when Columbus came, of course he had navigators with him who were Black or African.
Yeah.
But it is said that he found Black people in the Americas. So theoretically, there are Black people in the Americas, and of course, we see the large heads of the Olmecs in Mexico, and those are again, obviously, I would say Africoid. And so there's a question of the African presence. I know Van Sertim has done some work there, and there are others who you probably know. Oh, okay. There you go. All right. Take us into the African presence in the Americas before Columbus.
Certainly. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
And I'm going to share something that any Americans watching this, African Americans, you need to see this, because this is what you're not being told.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let me get to this. All right, now, there was an exhibition catalog that came out in 1963, and it's called the Olmec Tradition. And this exhibition catalog, as you can see, June 18th to August the 25th, 1963, the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, Texas. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. We turn over the page, and there's an article called The Olmec Culture by Alfonso Medellin Zenlil. And then we turn over, and can you see that there's an image called Monument F?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you see that there's another image called Head Number 1?
Yes.
Head number 1. Now, can you see head number 1? He's looking away from you, but you can see the back of his head.
Right.
And his hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, that's very significant because that is the key. That's what most people have never seen. Most people have seen Monument F. They've never seen head number 1 with the hair. Now we're going to see what the museum catalog says about head number 1. We blow it up, and can you see that on the left-hand side, you've got it in Spanish, and on the right-hand side, you've got it in English.
Mm-hmm.
Let's read it. The colossal heads of Monument F of Tres Zapotes principally have vigorous and precise Negroid physical characteristics, such as prominent cheekbones, thick lips, and platyrrhine noses. For a long time, there was concern as to what the hair is or was, since in the case of colossal heads, they are invariably covered by a cap or helmet. This doubt could have gone on indefinitely, but finally some light has been thrown on the problem with the discovery of 2 heads, 0.75 meters tall, which are identified as numbers 1 and 2 of Laguna de los Terros, on which, together with the characteristic cheekbones and platyrrhine nose, there is a hair arrangement or head of curly hair.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's very, very significant. You see, what happens today is most people have never seen number 1. Mm-hmm. I've gone through the work of Rashidi. I've gone through the work of the other African Americans. They don't reproduce head number 1 because they've never seen it. And they've never seen this exhibition catalog. And so what this shows then is there clearly was a Negro presence in the Olmec culture. Now, who were these Negroes? Where did they come from? All of that we can't prove, but the main point is they were there, and this is not something that starts with Ivan van Sertima. As you can see, this is an exhibition catalog. Mm-hmm. Do you see? And because most people have never seen this, they're not in a position to argue the case. All right, let me show you something else as well, which I think is relevant. I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to show you something else. Greetings, my name is Robin Walker. I'm also known as the Black History Man. I am perhaps best known for my 2006 book, When We Ruled. Based on this book, I'm launching a new online history course aimed at you, the adults. You could be a parent, you could be a teacher, a mechanic, cleaner, professionals, care workers, security guards, taxi drivers, kitchen workers, entrepreneurs, tech heads, lawyers, all of you. We want people from all over the world to be empowered by our content. We want you to gain mastery over your history and heritage. And you can do this by subscribing to our course. Click on the link to get this powerful, life-changing material. All right, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, it says, what can we learn from Olmec burials? But there's an article on Professor Frederick A. Peterson, who wrote the book Ancient Mexico. And this is what they talk about. Frederick A. Peterson, how basically his Ancient Mexico is the standard book on ancient Mexican history. Standard. Does that make sense? So let's read what he's got. Blow it up and we read. Skeletons of the magicians, supplemented by comparison with figures that they made, show that they had a certain adenoidism in the mouth, artificially deformed heads, short legs, low and obese bodies with feminine characteristics, and that they practiced dental mutilation, a substratum with negroid characteristics that intermingled with the magicians lead some anthropologists to speculate on negroid immigration into Mexico. So what we have then, we've got the bones, we've got the sculptures, and we've got one of the sculptures that clearly has African hair. And none of this has got anything to do with Van Sertima. This is before Van Sertima, this research was even before Van Sertima got on the scene. Do you see? So I think people need to see this because it shuts up a lot of stupid arguments that people are having. People are trying to say Van Sertima started this, Van Sertima made it up. Van Sertima didn't make anything up. That's what the data is. And this is why most people need to see the museum catalogue, because that is what was put out in 63.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is obviously, clear evidence. I think it documents, more and more, our presence around the world, physically, and contributing to the beginning of human beings in all of these continental areas. Obviously, what happened in Europe was an aberration, shall we say, because of climatology, and our ancestors there got trapped and then became leucoid, if you will, or lost pigmentation and whatever else we don't know in terms of the transformations due to a climate and environment. But it's important for us to understand this, that we're planetary people. We see ourselves in this sort of claustrophobic situation where we have been put by the last 500 years of European domination and hegemony, and we don't understand that we're bigger than that. And we have therefore the most glorious presence and the most glorious history, certainly on planet Earth, in terms of what we have accomplished as the original human beings. And kudos to you in terms of your historical detective work, if you will, making it available out there to the public. I think that we emphasize too much Europe, and that's why I wanted to go that route, to go through the Near East or Middle East or whatever, through India, through China, Far East, and then perhaps overland or overseas, shall we say, to the Americas. Let's get back to the Americas a little bit, and then maybe we can come back to Europe. But the voyages, who discovered America first? The Chinese? Certainly we know it's not Columbus. What about the Malian voyages? I think those are recorded. And what about Egyptian voyages? Were the Egyptian voyages to the New World, to the Americas?
All right, this is what we can prove, or what it seems reasonable to believe. Mm-hmm. All right, now there is an account that was published by a Syrian scholar called Shihab al-Din ibn Fadl el-Umari. And his book was published in 1342. And in chapter 10, he reports on a conversation that he had with Mansa Musa. And in the conversation, Mansa Musa talks about his predecessor attempting 2 voyages or 2 sets of voyages across the Atlantic involving hundreds, perhaps thousands of ships. People have speculated on who was that predecessor. Dr. Basil Davidson thinks it's Mansa Muhammad, but most people think it's Mansa Abu Bakari II. And logic would say that it would have been some years before Musa becomes the Mansa of Mali. So that would put it somewhere around 1311, 1310, something like that. All right, so the question now then is, did the Malians arrive in the Americas, yes or no? We know for a fact that there are 14th century art pieces made by the Native Americans that clearly have African faces in them. And there was a scholar who wrote a whole book on this. His name was Count Alexander von Wuthenau, and his book was called Pre-Columbian Terracottas, Art of the Americas. I've got the book, and Negroes are all over it, basically, all over it. And he speculated that these Negroes could have been from Egypt or from Nigeria. Yeah. All right. Now, he admits he's speculating. Does that make sense? But obviously, if you've got some black folks, you've got to guess where you think they're coming from. Now, I think that the 14th century ones are Malians. Then we have the fact that 2 Negro skeletons from Africa have definitely been discovered in the West, dated around the year 1250, and they were discovered Danish Virgin Islands. And it was the Smithsonian that discovered them in the 70s, and they're clearly Negroes. So that means that some black folks definitely got there. Now, are these Negroes the same as the ones discovered by Columbus in Darien? Darien on a modern map is Panama. And quite possibly so. Do you see? So we've got little bits of evidence that when you put it together, tends to create a kind of narrative. Now, the Olmec period would be something like 1200 BC, something like that. Van Sertima speculates that the Olmec people represent voyages from Egypt. Another speculation is the voyages could have come from Kush. But again, this is speculation, because if you consider that you've got black people all over Africa, they could have come from anywhere in Africa, in truth. And because you've got black people in Asia at this time period, yeah, Melanesians, Micronesians, they could have come from any of those places too. Now, why people think it was Egypt is when you look at the Olmec and later on Mayan art, you can spot things like, wait a minute, that looks like something in an ancient Egyptian ritual. That looks like something in an ancient Egyptian ritual. And there was an Indian scholar from this country called Rafiq Ali Jarazboy. He wrote a whole book where he's just comparing ancient American Nile Valley, ancient American Nile Valley, ancient American Nile Valley, and he's just showing you, yeah? And there are so many of these similarities that one could reasonably suggest that it could well have been the Egyptians that did that. Mm-hmm. Other speculation is, are you aware of there's a toxicology report on some of the Egyptian mummies and whether or not they had ingested American cocaine and tobacco. You aware of that? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a study that was done, and it was an Eastern European scholar. And this Eastern European scholar, her evidence will put you in prison. You see, that's how tight her evidence is. If she testifies against you, you're going to jail. And her team conducted a study on New Kingdom mummies and some of the mummies have got presence of tobacco and cocaine in them. And there's only one source that tobacco and cocaine could have come from, and that's the Americas. And so we now have a situation where if there wasn't any contact between the Native Americans and ancient Egypt, how did
I didn't know there were American drug pushers back in the day.
Here's the point. It's quite possible that both of those things were used therapeutically, you see. Yeah. So I'm not going to accuse our ancestors of being base heads. It's quite possible there was a therapeutic thing going on. But the bottom line is her evidence will put you in prison. That's the point. And of course, Egyptologists can't answer that because they know her evidence will put you in prison. So what are you going to say? So what they've chosen to do instead is this. But the documentary, you can find it online, you can find it. And yeah, the evidence is tight. So let's draw a conclusion. The conclusion being, we don't know which group of Black people the Olmec heads represent. But the smart speculation suggests either people from Egypt or people from Kush. As a thank you for visiting our website, we are giving you a free copy of our exclusive 100 Black History Facts, which is in fact a taster of our course content. Make sure you leave your email address and we will send it right to you. We hope it inspires you to dig deeper into your history and heritage.
I think what you've been able to do is to, is to help to paint a picture of us as a global people with a global presence from the earliest time that humans inhabited the planet. So that the history of humanity is really our history. And our history has been truncated, that has been distorted, has been destroyed, by Europe and the European presence. And I think what I'd like us to do next time is to look at Europe and to look at then the African presence going into Europe, European civilization developing, whether it's from Crete or from Greece, and that relationship, Homer, etc., early days, and begin then to develop the understanding of how recent, in some sense, that was in terms of our relationship, and so much of our history had gone on before that we don't know about, and we should know about, because then that will put it in perspective. Because the perspective will give us some understanding of why it is that the European now seems to want to crush us and dominate us, because initially we dominated them because of our presence and our civilization that antedated their presence because they were trapped by the Ice Age for so long. So, thank you for all the detail that you've given us today, and I look forward to us taking on Europe the next time around.
Thank you very much, sir.
Wonderful, Robin. Until next time. Good.